Normally with blackleg, we tell farmers to monitor their crops at the end of the year to see how much stem canker they've got. But in 2016, we're seeing an enormous amount of leaf lesions in some crops. This crop here, the lesions on the leaves are really starting to colonise the whole leaf, and in some cases the leaves are actually dying because they're so colonised by blackleg. So there's obviously a lot of concern from farmers and agronomists what this actually means for the yield for the crops at the end of the year.
So why is blackleg so severe this year? Firstly, it's really due to the seasonal conditions. Obviously it's a wet year, but more importantly for the disease, it's a year where we're getting a lot of leaf wetness. So we're getting a lot of showers. So there's not many days where the crops are drying out. And it's that constant leaf wetness which is driving the disease cycle. So it's that wetness which allows the spores to be released, and it allows them to colonise the leaves and then produce more spores and keep reinfecting the crops. That's the first and key point. The second point is about the blackleg itself. So blackleg is sexually reproducing, so it's able to overcome resistance. It's a very, very diverse pathogen. And what we've seen over the last few years is that people have been growing primarily Group A cultivars because they've been very good cultivars, but because they've grown that, it's allowed the pathogen to adapt to that type of resistance, and therefore the pathogens become more virulent against those types of cultivars. And the third point is the fungicides. So in 2015, we did a survey of 200 paddocks and found about 15% of those paddocks there was resistance to the fungicides. So just as the pathogen overcomes cultivar resistance, we think it's also starting to overcome the seed treatments that we use on a canola crop. So when you put those three things together, it's probably no wonder we've got very, very severe disease in 2016. The question is, what's it going to mean and what should you do about it?
With canola, there are two types of resistance. There's major gene resistance and there's adult plant resistance. So in this case, we see here where this particular crop's got so many lesions, it means the major gene resistance isn't effective. So the blackleg is getting into the plants, that major resistance gene isn't stopping the blackleg getting in. So the real question with this crop is, how much adult plant resistance has it got? How much resistance is there to stop the fungus from growing from the leaf down to the crown of the plant to cause that canker later in the year? So the only way to know that is to check your blackleg rating on your cultivar, and if you've got a rating of R, MR, you should be okay. MR and below, if you've seen this type of disease on the leaves, there is some scope for yield loss. And I guess this is the decision then, if you have got a cultivar with a lower blackleg rating and lots of lesions, of whether you make that decision to put a chemical spray on, a fungicide like Prosaro.
And if your cultivar is MR and below and you've got really high levels of disease, you've now got to make a decision of whether you put on a foliar fungicide to protect that crop. And the key points there are, what is the yield potential of the crop? So if you've got high yield potential, obviously it's easy to get an economic return from spraying. It's if you've got MR or below, so the resistance is good but not fantastic. And thirdly, if you've got really high levels of disease. And if you've got all those three things, I would definitely suggest spraying. At the moment, all our research has shown that the 4 to 6 leaf stage, you get the best effect from your fungicide. However, if your crop has gone past that growth stage, you can probably even apply fungicide up to 8 or 9 leaf stage and still get some effect. The fungicide won't be as effective as if it was applied at the 4 to 6 leaf, but it still will give some protection. And this year with high yield potential, you'll probably still get your money back.